Gone are the days when love stories began with "we met at a coffee shop" or "our eyes locked across a crowded room." Today's love stories sound more like "we bonded over our shared obsession with medieval blacksmithing," or "she was the only person who understood my passion for collecting vintage calculator manuals." Welcome to the age where niche interests aren't just hobbies. They're becoming the new foundation of modern romance. If you've ever felt like you were too weird, too specific, or too passionate about something obscure to find love, this video is about to completely change your perspective. We're diving deep into how the internet has revolutionized not just how we connect, but who we connect with, and why being obsessively passionate about something incredibly specific might actually be your secret weapon in finding lasting love. But first, let me ask you something. Have you ever tried explaining your deepest passion to someone who just doesn't get it? Maybe you're into speed cubing and you've tried to explain to someone why shaving 0.3 seconds off your personal best made you cry tears of joy. Or perhaps you're fascinated by the history of abandoned shopping malls and you've watched someone's eyes glaze over as you enthusiastically describe the architectural significance of a dead Sears department store. We've all been there, and that feeling of being misunderstood in our passions can be incredibly isolating. Here's the thing though, that isolation you've felt, it's not a bug in your personality. It's actually becoming a feature in modern dating. The very specificity that once made us feel like outsiders is now becoming the bridge that connects us to our perfect matches. And the numbers back this up in ways that might surprise you. Let's start with a story that perfectly illustrates this shift. Meet Sarah and David. Sarah is a professional graphic designer, but her true passion lies in something most people have never heard of: competitive soap carving. Yes, that's a real thing. She spends her weekends meticulously carving intricate designs into bars of soap, competing in online forums, and following soap carving influencers on Instagram. For years, Sarah kept this hobby largely to herself because, well, how do you bring up soap carving on a first date without sounding completely bizarre? Traditional dating apps were a nightmare for Sarah. She'd match with guys who seemed nice enough, but when the conversation inevitably turned to hobbies and interests, she'd either have to lie by omission or watch as potential matches slowly backed away from her weird passion. She tried general interest groups, hobby meetups for broader creative activities, but nothing quite clicked. She was looking for someone who wouldn't just tolerate her soap carving obsession, but who would understand the meditative focus it required, the satisfaction of a perfectly executed rose petal, the community aspect of sharing creations online. Then Sarah discovered a niche forum dedicated to soap carving. Within this community of maybe 200 active members worldwide, she found David. David wasn't just supportive of her hobby, he was equally obsessed. Their first conversation lasted 6 hours and covered everything from the best soap brands for different carving techniques to the philosophical implications of creating art from something designed to dissolve. They understood each other's passion at a cellular level. But here's where it gets interesting. Their shared niche interest became the foundation for a relationship that extended far beyond soap carving. Because when you find someone who truly gets your deepest passion, it creates a level of understanding and acceptance that permeates every other aspect of your relationship. Sarah and David have been together for 3 years now, and while they still carve soap together every weekend, their connection has grown into something much deeper. This story isn't unique anymore. Across the internet, people are finding love through the most specific niche communities you can imagine. There are couples who met through competitive Scrabble forums, others who connected over their shared love of 1970s elevator music, and some who bonded over their mutual fascination with the history of traffic light design. The more specific the interest, it seems, the stronger the initial connection. So what's driving this shift? The answer lies in understanding how the internet has fundamentally changed the economics of human connection. Before the digital age, finding someone who shared your obscure interests was largely a matter of geographical luck. If you lived in a small town and you were passionate about, say, vintage typewriter restoration, your chances of finding a romantic partner who shared that passion were essentially zero. You'd have to choose between your niche interests and your romantic life, often settling for someone who tolerated your hobbies rather than celebrated them. The internet changed everything by collapsing geographical barriers and creating what researchers call infinite choice architecture. Suddenly, that community of vintage typewriter enthusiasts that might have had only one member in your entire state now became a global community of hundreds or thousands of people. And within that community, romantic connections became not just possible, but probable. But there's something even deeper happening here that goes beyond simple logistics. Niche interests serve as incredibly effective compatibility filters in ways that traditional dating metrics often miss. Think about it. When someone shares your passion for something obscure, they're revealing something fundamental about their personality, their values, and their way of seeing the world. Let's break this down. If you're passionate about urban exploration, the hobby of exploring abandoned buildings and hidden parts of cities, you're not just interested in cool photos and adrenaline rushes. You're probably someone who values curiosity over comfort, who finds beauty in decay and forgotten stories, who's willing to bend rules for the sake of discovery, and who has a deep appreciation for history and architecture. When you meet someone else who shares this passion, you're not just finding someone who likes the same hobby. You're finding someone whose entire worldview aligns with yours in ways that might take months or years to discover through traditional dating. This is what psychologists call deep homophily. Similarity at the level of fundamental values and worldviews rather than surface-level characteristics. And research shows that relationships built on deep homophily are significantly more stable and satisfying than those based on more superficial commonalities. There's also the factor of passion recognition. When you're deeply passionate about something niche, you develop an ability to recognize and appreciate passion in others, even if it's directed towards something completely different from your interests. Someone who understands what it means to spend 3 hours perfecting a single origami fold is more likely to respect and support their partner's 3-hour sessions perfecting sourdough starter maintenance, even if they have no personal interest in bread making. This creates what relationship researchers call passion compatibility, not necessarily sharing the same interests, but sharing the same capacity for deep, focused interest. Many successful couples in the niche interest world don't actually share hobbies at all. Instead, they share an understanding of what it means to be passionate about something, and they create space in their relationship for both partners to pursue their individual obsessions while supporting each other's journeys. The platforms facilitating these connections are evolving rapidly. While traditional dating apps focus on photos, basic demographics, and surface-level interests, new platforms are emerging that put niche interests front and center. Apps like Iris Dating use artificial intelligence to match people based on aesthetic preferences, while platforms like Sissa cater specifically to LGBTQ women with niche interests. Discord servers have become unexpected matchmaking grounds, with people finding love through shared gaming interests, book clubs, and even very specific meme communities. But perhaps the most interesting development is the rise of what I call passion-first dating. This is where people build entire dating profiles around their niche interests, leading with their weirdest, most specific passions rather than trying to appear broadly appealing. The logic is counterintuitive but brilliant. By being maximally specific about what you're passionate about, You filter out people who won't appreciate your authentic self while attracting exactly the kind of person who will not just accept but celebrate your quirks. Take Marcus, who built his entire dating profile around his obsession with vintage pinball machines. His photos showed him restoring machines. His bio was filled with pinball terminology, and his conversation starters all revolved around his hobby. Did this limit his matches? Absolutely. Did it result in higher quality connections? Without question. Marcus ended up meeting Elena, who wasn't interested in pinball at all, but was fascinated by Marcus's dedication to preservation and craftsmanship. She was a vintage clothing restorer, and they bonded over their shared appreciation for keeping old things beautiful and functional. This brings us to an important distinction in niche interest dating. There are two main types of connections happening. The first is direct interest overlap, people who share the exact same niche passion. These relationships often start with incredibly deep conversations about shared interests and can create an immediate sense of, finally, someone who gets it. The second type is passion resonance, people who don't share specific interests, but who recognize and appreciate the depth of passion in each other. Both types of connections are proving more durable than relationships formed through traditional dating approaches. A recent study following couples for 5 years found that relationships that began through shared niche interests had a 23% lower breakup rate compared to those that began through general dating apps or traditional meeting methods. But it's not just about finding relationships, it's about finding the right relationship. When your deepest passion is part of the foundation of your romantic connection, you're more likely to end up with someone who supports your authentic self rather than trying to change you. This is particularly important for people whose interests might be seen as unusual or time-consuming by the general population. Consider the world of competitive cosplay. This isn't just about dressing up, it involves months of planning, hundreds of hours of detailed construction work, significant financial investment, and travel to conventions. For someone deeply involved in cosplay, having a partner who sees this as a waste of time or money can be relationship poison. But finding a partner through the cosplay community, or at least someone who understands and appreciates creative passion, changes everything. The impact extends beyond just romantic relationships too. Many couples who meet through niche interests report that their social circles expand dramatically. When you're part of a tight-knit community around a specific interest, your partner gains access to that entire community, often leading to lifelong friendships and professional connections they never would have made otherwise. There's also something beautiful happening with how these relationships handle differences. When you meet someone through a shared passion, you start from a place of deep mutual respect and understanding. This foundation makes it easier to navigate differences in other areas because you've already established that core connection. Couples report being more accepting of differences in politics, lifestyle choices, and other preferences because they have such solid common ground in their shared passion. The professional implications are fascinating too. Many couples who meet through niche interests end up collaborating professionally or supporting each other's passion-related businesses. The soap carving couple I mentioned earlier. They now run a successful YouTube channel teaching soap carving techniques. The pinball restoration guy and vintage clothing restorer. They opened a shop together that specializes in mid-century restoration services. But let's address the elephant in the room. Does this trend toward niche interest dating mean we're becoming more narrow or exclusive in our romantic choices? Some critics argue that seeking partners through highly specific interests creates echo chambers and reduces the beautiful randomness of traditional romance. There's something to this concern, but the evidence suggests the opposite effect is actually happening. When people feel secure and accepted in their deepest passions, they often become more open and curious about other interests and perspectives. Sarah, our soap carving enthusiast, has become an amateur expert in David's secondary interest, vintage motorcycle restoration, not because she has to, but because seeing his passion in action made her curious about the world he loves. This kind of expansive curiosity seems to be a common pattern in niche interest relationships. The psychological benefits are significant too. Many people report feeling more confident and authentic in relationships that began through shared interests. There's no need to hide or downplay the things that bring you joy. No anxiety about when to reveal your weird hobbies. No fear that your partner will judge you for spending your Saturday afternoon doing something they think is pointless. This authenticity creates what psychologists call unconditional positive regard, a relationship dynamic where both partners feel accepted for who they truly are rather than who they think they should be. This level of acceptance has ripple effects throughout the relationship, creating more honest communication, better conflict resolution, and higher overall satisfaction. We're also seeing interesting demographic shifts. Niche interest dating is particularly popular among millennials and Gen Z, generations that have grown up with the internet and are more comfortable building communities around specific interests. But it's not limited to younger people. In fact, some of the most passionate niche communities include people who've spent decades developing expertise in their areas of interest. The future of this trend looks incredibly promising. As virtual and augmented reality technologies improve, we're likely to see even more immersive ways for people to connect over shared interests. Imagine virtual reality meetups for astronomy enthusiasts where you can explore galaxies together, or augmented reality experiences that let vintage car lovers restore classic vehicles side by side, despite being on different continents. Artificial intelligence is also playing an increasingly important role. Advanced matching algorithms are getting better at identifying not just shared interests, but compatible passion levels, communication styles, and relationship goals within niche communities. We're moving toward a future where technology can help us find not just people who like the same things we do, but people who love those things with the same intensity and for similar reasons. But perhaps the most important aspect of this trend is what it says about changing attitudes toward authenticity in relationships. We're moving away from the idea that love requires compromise of our deepest selves and toward the recognition that the best relationships happen when we can be completely, unapologetically ourselves with another person. The message here isn't that you need to find someone who shares your exact interests to find love. The message is that your passionate interests, no matter how niche or unusual they might seem, are not obstacles to love. They're pathways to it. Whether you find someone who shares your specific passion or someone who simply understands and celebrates what it means to be passionate about something, your authentic interests are your greatest asset in finding lasting love. So if you've been hiding your collection of vintage lunchboxes, downplaying your expertise in birdwatching, or feeling embarrassed about your obsession with competitive Tetris, it might be time to reconsider. In a world where everyone is trying to be broadly appealing, the people who dare to be specifically, authentically themselves are the ones who stand out. Your niche interests aren't making you undateable, they're making you unforgettable. The revolution in how we fall in love isn't just about technology or changing social norms. It's about the recognition that the things that make us weird are often the same things that make us wonderful. And in a world of infinite connection possibilities, wonderful always wins over generic. What's your niche interest that you've been afraid to lead with? What passion have you been downplaying because you thought it made you too specific for love? Maybe it's time to stop seeing your interests as limitations and start seeing them as your greatest strengths, in finding someone who will love not just who you are, but who you are when you're doing what you love most. Because at the end of the day, that's when we're most ourselves, and that's when we're most lovable.